Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to geek out with you all. It's going to be fun. Well, I'm going to have fun and hopefully you will too. So I really believe you can accelerate your learning and your career with open source. It's what I've done. It's what I want everyone else to do as well. So open source is everywhere, right? It's in your phones. It's probably in this projector. I know it's in cars. Your parents are using it in their kitchen appliances. I mean, it's even gone to Mars. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, open source is literally everywhere. But who am I? Who's this person on stage talking about open source? So you've probably seen me on YouTube or Twitter. I'm usually doing my usual pose, which is my screaming face, or you see me with my laptop on the beach or whatever as a digital nomad, travel a lot. Maybe the screaming face is because I'm always near water with my laptop, but luckily nothing bad has happened so far. On a serious note, I've worked with a variety of companies, from government departments in the UK to high street banks to open source startups and open source enterprises. So I've seen the open source world from a variety of different angles, and I'm a GitHub star and won various awards from GitHub as well. So what we're going to cover today is we've got 25 minutes, we've got a lot to cram in. So we're going to talk about what is open source very briefly, just make sure we're all on the same page. Then we're going to talk about my journey again briefly, and why you should care about open source. How to find a good project, because this is quite challenging. There are various ways. I want to talk about open source do's and don'ts, because there are some things you should do and some things that you shouldn't do. And actionable steps that you can take today. So I want to follow you all on Twitter and make sure you contribute to open source this weekend. And I'll share a community success story as well, and questions. I love questions, so please have your questions ready for the end. But I said I love questions, so before we get started, let me ask you some questions. So put your hand up if you've contributed to open source before. Okay, wow, that's great. I love that. So I'd say about like kind of 75%. So put your hand out if you want to contribute to open source. Okay, like almost 100%. Well, hopefully we can get 100% by the end, so that's awesome. Thank you so much. I did have a joke question in there, but the numbers weren't quite right, so I couldn't put the joke question in there. But it's fine, it made me happy. Like, so many hands went up. I'm super, super happy. So what is open source? I like to think of open source like social media, like Twitter or like Instagram. You post your content. I specifically don't say code because it's more than code. I'm going to talk about GitHub in this talk, but there are other platforms, but I'm going to use that. I'm wearing my GitHub hoodie, so I'm a bit biased. But it includes testing, documentation, translating, design, like so much more. Even Hacktoberfest this year included no-code contributions. And I'll show you how you can include that in your open source project as well. Going back to the social media side, GitHub's slogan is social coding. I'm not going to use that slogan because I'm not going to focus on the coding part. I want to focus on the social part, right? Just like Twitter or wherever, you can like someone's code, you can like someone's project, you can reshare it, but you can go further. You can actually make changes to the project and you keep making improvements all the time. But so many hands went up, I want to skip over quite fast over that. But one thing I'd like to point out is all the tools and projects you use, Angular, React, Svelte, and so forth, they're all open source. And they probably won't be here in 5 or 10 or 20 years' time. But open source will be, which is why it's so great to be involved in this. It's great to see so many hands go up. Very briefly, my journey into open source. I got into open source before there was Git, GitHub, pull request. Like, it was a very different landscape back then. We had different servers, you had to get access to someone's server, they used different tools. It was very interesting, but it was fun. And let me share something secret with you. My first contribution, I say contribution, not pull request, because there was no pull request back then, I fixed the typo. And if I'm honest, my second, third, and 10th contributions were also fixing typos. But then I focused on a project and I got to know the maintainers and the community members, and then I was able to improve code coverage. Then I was able to fix bugs and then get involved in features. And it just grew and exploded from there. And I really want that for all of you. So why you should care? Can one person, can little old me, make a difference? Yes, you can. I mentioned fixing typos a lot, and that's a great way to get started. And that really adds value, because if you're a native English speaker or you're really good at English and you see a typo, it might make sense to you still, you understand what's going on. But if it's not your first language, that person might go and look to see what is this new word that they found. So by fixing a typo, it is making improvements. And to be honest, the little improvements, they add up to be big improvements. That's really important. But why you should care is, if you go to a job interview and they say, hey, can we see some of your work? Usually you can't, right? Your employer's work is private most of the time. Well, if you get involved in open source, you get to work on real-world projects, like get real-world experience. You can share it publicly with someone who's interviewing you or anyone you want to show. And you'll get to see different perspectives. If you work in a company, you're going to do something a certain way. Whereas if you work on open source projects, you're going to see a different way. You might not agree with it, but you're aware of it. And then you might decide to use it or not to use it on your project. So getting involved in open source just gives you those different perspectives. So you're also going to improve your networking because you're going to grow your network. I've met so many amazing people from open source, really, really have. And it's just been a wonderful, I don't know how many years, I won't say, it's been a long time. And by doing this, you will accelerate your career. As developers, or in tech, I should say, not just developers, if you're in tester, designer, etc., it's not about necessarily always about the code or the changes or the designs that we make. It's really about how we collaborate and the network that we grow. And that way is how you can get jobs coming to you. Recruiters, hiring managers, they're all looking at GitHub really to see how you collaborate, not just how your code is. It's not so important how amazing your code is today, as long as it's better than it was 3 months ago. That's why it's good to have that history, but also how you communicate with people. If you disagree with someone, that's fine. If you found a better way to do it, that's fine. Or if someone's found a better way to do something on how you've implemented it, that's also fine. But do you collaborate in a professional way? So not just about code. I am going to go on about this a little bit because I'm super, super passionate about it. Coding is only a small part of the project. I'm going to give an example. You're going to raise an issue, you're going to put a comment on someone else's issue. If it's a bug, you're going to agree with the bug, or you didn't get the bug in your browser or version. If you're reviewing pull requests, which is super, super important, again, you're not making any coding changes. And context is key. When I hire for my clients, I can straight away see if someone contributes to open source because they're always giving context. When they raise an issue, they don't say, following our discussion, I'm going to choose option 3. And anyone else coming to that issue is like, what was option 3? What's option 2 and option 1? Whereas someone who contributes to open source understands that people are in different time zones, people work on different projects, they jump in and out of projects. You're going to say, well, following our discussion of options 1, 2, and 3, and they're going to say what the options are. It might be a bit of a brief, cut-down version of it, but I want to go with option 3. So that's super, super important. And the onboarding process for open source projects is so important. So many projects are really great technically, but they don't have many contributors, they don't have many stars, they're not used that much because the onboarding process is not that good. And that's where all of you can come in. You can actually improve that. If you're new to a project, you can add so much value by improving their quick start guide. I love it when someone comes to me and say, hey Eddie, I want to contribute to your project. Can you tell me about your project? I'm like, no. Have a look at the project, and if you can't understand how to get it running, what it's about, there's nothing wrong with you, there's something wrong with my project, and together we can improve it for the next person. So I mentioned collaboration. So usually it all starts off with an idea or a thought. So you get an idea and you have a discussion. It could be a GitHub discussion, it could be a Discord discussion, wherever it is. And then from that discussion, you talk about various options. And then after that, you usually raise an issue, and this is the kind of the step you're going to take. And then in that issue, you also discuss how you might implement it and what libraries you might use, and then you raise a pull request. And a pull request is project changes. Again, I didn't say code, it's project changes where you have more discussion. So it is really collaboration, and some changes with a lot of collaboration. So it really focuses on collaboration, which is super important because it's transferable. You might pivot. You might be a developer today, you might go into another area of tech, or you might pivot into development. Whatever it is, it's all about collaboration. This is the Eddie Hub community, the community that I run. It's an open source community. We focus on inclusion, but I just want to show you the strap line, which is collaboration first, code second. And that's something we live by and has really, really helped us geek out with lots of more awesome people. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, right, I need to make a big pull request to the biggest, fastest project ever. No, you don't. It's really about adding value and doing it consistently. Like you can tell when someone's going out for a job because you kind of look at their GitHub and the last weekend is like 100 hours of contributions and nothing for the rest of the year. And that really, like imagine going to the gym and trying to work out all weekend for the Olympics. Like you couldn't do it. It's something you do little and often. And why have I got a tooth here? Well, the tooth is here because the example I like to give is it's like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth every morning and evening. You do it without thinking, and the value over time is massive. You don't wake up in the morning or you just finished your dinner and you're going to go to bed a couple of hours later. You don't think, oh my God, I've got to brush my teeth. What am I going to do? You just do it. It just happens. And like the benefit over time is really important. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you fall asleep in front of the TV on a Saturday night and you forget to brush your teeth, they're not going to fall out the next morning. And the same with open source. You need to contribute little and often, and if you miss a week, miss a month, for whatever reason, it's fine. It's not going to ruin your career or anything like that. So challenges. Some of the challenges, I don't have time. I hear this all the time, and like I said, I want to have a huge Q&A section at the end. Where do I find a project? I found a bug, but I don't know how to fix it. Well, working backwards, if you found a bug and you don't know how to fix it, raise the issue, take a screenshot, what version were you using of the browser, node, whatever it was. That adds value. You don't have to fix it, but making the community and maintainers aware is really important. Where do you find a project? There are so many ways to find projects. That's the easy part. The hard part is finding a project that you want to contribute to. Try and find a little bit of time, like 30 minutes, try and raise an issue. You could even try and verify someone else's issue. Yes, I have this same challenge, I'm on a different version or the same version. That all adds value. Go through a quick start on a project that you want to get used to using, and are there any steps missing? The amount of projects I've seen that say, step 1, clone our project. Step 2, npm install. And that's great. Most of us, if not all of us, know what to do in between those steps, right? We didn't navigate into that directory. But the amount of people that I see in our Discord or on Stack Overflow say, well, I did npm install where it says package JSON not found, because there was a step in between that the maintainers probably took for granted because they know they need to navigate into the directory. But let's make it easier and more inclusive for everybody, people who are new to tech as well. We don't want to make any assumptions. So how to find a project? Well, you can search for labels. You can also search for topics. But what I recommend is going to the advanced search on GitHub. It's a bit hidden, so you probably haven't seen this before. I don't know. Who's seen this before? A few people, okay. That's good, a few people have seen it. But hopefully more of you will see it after this. It's a bit hidden. But the great thing is you can search for a label, like good first issue, but you can also search by language, but you can also search the activity, like when was the project last updated? Because you don't want to search for a good first issue and then find out the project hasn't been active for the last 2 years. But you can also search for stars. Stars aren't a great metric, but they're a metric that we can use. Because if you're just starting out, I would say pick a project that has less stars, because then it's not moving so fast and it's a bit more flexible. You've got more access to the maintainers. But if you want to take the next step, you might pick a bigger project because you might want your next challenge. And there's like 2 more pages of options that you can search for, but I'm just highlighting a few now. When you found a project, that's the easy part. When you found the project, now it's the hard part. Do you want to contribute to that project or not? A few things you need to keep an eye out for. One thing to do first, I'd recommend, is go to the Insights tab and then go to the Community Standards and check that they've got a code of conduct and a license. I think that's the first thing you need to check. The others are, pretty important, but those are the 2 main ones. And if that's, ticked, then that's great. If it hasn't, maybe that's a contribution you could do to the project as well. Code of conduct, you don't have to write. There are open source templates that you can use for that. And license, you can raise an issue and ask them what license they want. My favorite hot tip, which I hope more and more people do this, if you're happy with the project so far, go to the pull request tab and go to the closed pull requests. And this will list 2 types of pull requests. Ones that were merged, and ones that were just closed. And the ones with the red icon are the ones that were closed without being accepted. And those are really important. You need to look at those and see how the conversation went on those. If they were, thank you so much for your contribution, but I'm sorry, this is not a feature we want right now. Have a look at our issues. Any more ideas? Please raise an issue first to save yourself making changes to the project and not getting accepted. Or has it just been closed without a comment? It's not very friendly. If you spent time and effort on something, you don't just want it to get closed. If it doesn't get accepted, that's fine, I don't mind, but at least leave a comment to say why it wasn't accepted. So do check a few of the closed pull requests and make sure the project is friendly. And so many hands went up at the beginning. This slide, I should have spent probably a bit more time on it now, but if you want to go to the next level, you probably want to become a maintainer. That's a way to stand out and level up even further, because you'll get to see things very differently. You'll get more issues, you'll get more pull requests that you have to look at, and you'll notice things that you think, when I raise my pull request, I won't do it that way because it makes it harder for the maintainer. So you will really, really improve by doing that. So you can become a maintainer of your own projects. I highly recommend doing that. You have more autonomy on what you can do, but also I recommend maybe becoming a maintainer of a more active project. And the way to do that is contribute to that project often. And by contribute, I mean add value. I don't mean code changes. We have maintainers on the link-free Eddie Hub project who don't even code. but they're going through the backlog. They're more project management side. They're checking, are there duplicates of issues? They're adding value and helping so much. There's so many ways that you can help. Again, this is the link-free project. I want to show you some actionable steps that you could take to most projects. I'm just going to use mine as an example. This will go for most projects, but this step is actually specific to ours. You could add yourself. So Linktree is an open source alternative to Linktree, and you can add your profile here, and it's done by a JSON file. So that's how you can get a green square today. We also have good first issues like many other projects, but one thing that I like to do, and if any of you are maintainers, I recommend you doing the same, is we have good first issues, but we also have points on our good first issues. And no one knows what those points means, and that's fine. You're not meant to. But you will know that a good first issue with 1 point is easier than a good first issue with 2 points. And so if you want to take something a bit more challenging, you can go for 2 or 3 points. Or if you're just starting out, you know to go for 1 pointer, because there's different types of good first issues. This is what you can apply to every project. So many projects, you probably recognize this package.json file in the script section. There's build, tests, lints, formats, storybook, all these great things. But most of these are done manually, as in someone's done it on their computer. They're not run every time someone does a contribution to the project. And I would say automate it, add a GitHub action. And you can see on the right that with a few lines of YAML config, you could add value to a project by automating some of their commands. It's a great contribution, it adds so much value. So if you see the project having some of these commands, every time someone submits a pull request, the linter should run. So therefore they can get notified that something can be improved on the project, or the tests have failed, or the build has failed. It's not to stop the maintainers coming to collaborate with the contributor, but let them collaborate on the more interesting, fun, and exciting stuff rather than your semicolons here, or you're missing a semicolon, or your double or single quotes are incorrect. So automate as much as possible. We also have tests on our projects, and a lot of them say fix me. Even the NASA project has this, which I think is really interesting. So you can get contributing to a lot of projects that have automated tests that aren't complete. They have the title of the test and they have the steps which the test should do, and then you can start filling in the gaps. Also, these tests run in the browser as the user. So there might be a situation that's missing. It doesn't mean you have to write the test, but you could write fix me, write the title, and write the steps a user would take. And you don't have to write the test. Someone else can come in and write the test, right? We're talking about collaboration here. You don't have to do everything yourself. Collaborate with other people. Each pull request needs to add value. And an empty test does add value because it gives someone else a placeholder to add the test, or vice versa. We're using Storybook, and we don't have all our components in Storybook, so you could add our components to Storybook, and a lot of it is kind of copied and pasted. It's a great way, again, to get started, get familiar with the community and the maintainers, and then you can pick up more difficult tasks from there. And a lot of projects use Storybook, so again, have a look. Are there any components that aren't added and that could be missed? We talked about becoming a maintainer. Another way to become a maintainer on someone else's project is to review pull requests. You don't have to be a maintainer to review pull requests. You can't merge the pull request, but you could do everything else. You can do inline comments. You could do comments at the end of the pull request. You can, say, looks good to me. So as you can see here, Pancasito is a member and the other person is just a contributor, but they're adding value to the project. I mentioned no-code contributions. If some of you are content creators like Francesco here, creating content on a project does add value. It could be a tutorial, could be a blog post, could be a YouTube video, could be a tweet, it could be a thread, it could be anything. Hacktoberfest brought the idea of having no-code contributions, and the way for the contributor to get credit for that was to have a no-code changelog where people could add their name, a link to their GitHub profile, and a link to the resource and the date it happened. And this is a great way to get more and more people involved in our projects and making the projects and community even better. So this year has been super, super exciting. So yes, if you're a designer, do some designs in Figma or whatever cool tools you use, and you can add a link to it and you can put the date on it. And as you do this, you're getting your contribution, because you have to make a pull request to add your name to this list. So you'll get your green square, and you'll get your pull requests and your contributors graph all looking good. Things not to do. So I recommend not using the default branch. If you fork a project, don't use the default branch. It will work the first time, but it probably won't work the second. I can see some people laughing. Most of us have been bitten by that. It works the first time. It worked the first time. It should work a second time. It will most likely fail the second or third time, depending on how it was merged into the project. So do everything in a branch in your fork. And make sure your branch is created from the default branch. There are occasions where it doesn't happen, but the majority of the time it always is from your default branch, not a previous branch you created. Massive PRs. Maintainers hate massive PRs. Like seriously, it's so hard to review them. And then I feel that they've done like 90% good work, and there might be like a comment here, we want them to change something. But these things take days and weeks to, everyone's in different time zones, people are busy, and that one little thing is blocking all that great contribution. And by the time you kind of get that last bit fixed with the contributor, things are starting to conflict that's happened in the project already. I would say keep it small. It just needs to add value. Going back to the GitHub action that I mentioned before, adding GitHub actions, another thing you can look at is improving the performance of a GitHub action. And performance sounds quite scary and hard. Well, we had a Kubernetes GitHub action that checks the Kubernetes files each time there was a contribution. But it only needs to run when the Kubernetes files change. It doesn't need to run when you change a JavaScript file or you change documentation. So someone made a one-line YAML config change, which filtered only run this action when the Kubernetes files change. And that provided so much value. Please don't DM people. Always ask in public, because someone else could jump in and help. We're all in different time zones and so forth, and especially if it was 3 minutes ago. I think half my notifications are from, I raised a pull request 2 minutes ago, can you review it? So bonus tips, join a community. It's really hard to do it alone. If you do it with a community, it makes it so much easier. And there's so many amazing communities out there. Join a few, but don't join too many and not be active. It's like joining the gym, right? Join one gym and go to it. So join one or two or three communities and be active in there. Just support other people and they'll support you. Always create an issue first and check the issue doesn't exist. As I mentioned, always use branch. Always ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. Questions are amazing. I love questions. I really hope we've got time for questions in a moment. And just another tip I'd like to say, what I look for when I'm hiring for my clients, I'm looking for how you collaborate with other people. I'm not looking, is your code the best and the latest code I've ever seen? Mentioned I was going to talk about community success stories. I have a developer stories series on my YouTube channel, and here's one I just picked. Confidence made an open source contribution, made a video on their open source contribution, and then the company, Rishab, reached out to them and said, hey, can you do this again, but can we pay you? Can we give you a job? He said, well, I'm a student. I said, well, why don't you work part-time now, and then when you finish studying, you can work for us full-time, and 1 or 2 years later, they're still working together. So you can get people coming to you, and then that way you've got more options. They're going to be more flexible because they came to you rather than you going to them. So let's conclude. Open source is not just about code. Open source is for everyone. So whatever you are in tech, you can get involved in open source, and it will really help you learn your technical skills as well as your soft and core skills. They're the hardest ones, and they take a lot of practice. Like, it's easy to show someone how to do a for loop, but it's really hard to show someone how to review a pull request with empathy and trying to understand what challenges the other person had. And if you want to connect with me on socials, there's my traditional links. Here's my link-free QR code, which will give you all my links. And also, I have a free video course on customizing your GitHub profile. It goes through widgets, GitHub actions, lots of great stuff. Yes, that's it. I want your questions. Please bring me your questions. Yes.
First one, when you show the dashboard from your at the hub, you mentioned some of the closed PR. You've got like the number system, 1, 2. Are those numbers from the points from the Fibonacci sequence, like the
yes.
Estimations, right?
So people who aren't involved in the project or who are new to the project won't be aware of what the numbers are, but they'll understand that a 3 is more work than a 1. And so that's what we're trying to portray, rather than they don't need to know how much a 3 is. Because some people have done a few good first issues and they say, look, I don't want to do another good first issue that someone else can do. I want something a bit more challenging. Maybe I'm not ready yet for a bigger issue. So we say, well, why don't you pick an issue with a smaller number, or pick a good first issue with a bigger number?
In your experience, what's the split between very experienced developers and very, let's say, young and green developers that, let's say, contribute? It's like 50-50, 70-30, I don't know.
Each project is different. I think it's more dependent on the project. If it's something like a Kubernetes, like infrastructure as code project, we have a bit more experienced people, but we do also have people who are new to it. And it's great because they look at the project from a different way and they ask questions. Well, why did you do it this way? It's like, why did we do it that way? Like, we don't know, it worked and we left it, and then we improve it for the next person. So having a mix is really important. In our link-free project, we actually like to have 2 code reviews from someone who's more experienced and someone who's less experienced, because they look at it from a different perspective, and then we all learn from that. I see reviewing pull requests not as I'm reviewing your work, more as knowledge transfer, so we're aware of the project and we can all learn from it. So super important. Any other questions? Yes.
How much this kind of evangelization that you're doing that can push youngsters, let's select this, to contributing to a repository, a project, can stimulate maintenance when the repository are more static, and more, when you see it's plenty of projects that have been in a good shape, but they're basically static. How, if you have seen this kind of involvement from the lower levels, can stimulate, trigger the maintainers to take back and reactivate the development?
I think this is a great question, and it's so true. I've got so many projects that some of them do get stale, but you get someone who's excited about the project, new to it, and they might do 50% of the work, but can't quite do the rest. You just pair with them on it, and you kind of, you finish it off. I've had so many projects that have been re-stimulated because of people being excited about it. I've even added some of those people as maintainers. They don't have to know everything about the project, but most of the contributions they can accept, and if they don't, they'll ask. They say, look, I've reviewed this, but I need a bit more help. So it really helps. I mean, the energy from the community, people ask me, where do I get my energy from? And it's really from the community. I'm human. I wake up on a Saturday morning sometimes and go, I'm quite tired, what should I do? Notification comes in, I'm working on this. I go, I've always wanted that feature on my project. You know what, Sarah, let's cancel plans. I want to do this. And you get really excited, and I love that. And like I said, they've done a lot of the heavy lifting already. You just need to maybe put a bit more of the polish on. But one thing I've started doing is the pull requests or the contributions need to be good enough. It doesn't need to be perfect, because another pull request can come and make an improvement later. So I try not to block pull requests. I try to let them in, and then as long as another pull request will come soon afterwards that will tidy it up and so forth. Obviously, there needs to be a balance, and it depends on how critical the project is and how many, because if someone forks that project, they might have code you don't want them to work with and so forth. So it's a balance. I don't think there's a perfect answer for that. For me, I see open source and content creation to be exactly the same. People say, Eddie, how can you tweet so much? How can you create so many videos and so forth? It's like, I don't create content, I document what I'm doing. When I learn something, I make a video on it, I do a tweet about it. And so when I'm working on my open source projects, or if I make a pull request to my project or someone else's, and they make an improvement to it, I'll tweet about it, and I'll take a screenshot and put a link in the reply and say, well, I learned this, and if you want to take a look, here it is. It's not me pushing my project. A lot of people, I see they go through all the Discord servers and then just keep spamming their repo link. Start my project, contribute. No one wants to be sold to. But if you say, hey, I learned this and I did this cool trick, here's the pull request I did, they're going to go look at the project as well after that. So, and people might want to collaborate with you. So if you're creating content on other platforms and saying, this person's cool, I want to geek out with them a bit more, they'll join your Discord, they'll have a look at your projects. So I did a live stream on the Linktree project, and my challenge was, in an hour and a half, could I replicate Linktree? And they called it Linktree on the live stream. You created the name, everything from scratch on the live stream. I woke up the next morning with like 400 pull requests, and I think we had like 600 stars on the project. And I was like, oh my word! The first thing I had to do was try and get some maintainers on the project. But again, it was just a live stream. It was me struggling on how to do things with React and Tailwind or whatever we were using at the time. Now it's Next.js, but I think it's changed a bit since I took those screenshots. But I think content creation, or what people call content creation, really helps. So just document your journey, document what you're working on. It could just be like one small tip that you put on Twitter or as a blog post or a video, and then it will get people to have a look at your project. Any other questions? Yes.
So you've got GitHub, Discord, you've got all the things that you said.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Which was the biggest challenge to reach like this point?
Growth wasn't the challenge. I think most people think growth is the challenge. It's not. For me, the challenge was, there are so many open source communities and great communities out there, but I wanted to focus our community, the Eddie Hub community, on inclusion. Everyone is welcome. If you're first day on tech, I want you to get involved in open source, and I want you to help other people, because they've got experiences from other experiences they've got. They can help people. So for me, I wanted it to be inclusive. So growth wasn't the problem. The problem was, or the challenge was, making sure they were following what I wanted, kind of the mentality of being inclusive. Don't say, hey guys, like, oh my word, this really annoyed me. Everyone, hey guys, thanks guys, like, come on. So that was my challenge. So therefore I had to kind of get moderators and maintainers to politely say, try and use folks or something, or don't even just say good morning. You don't have to put guys at the end. So that was my challenge. So when I created my Discord, we got to a stage after a few months, I think of about 600 members in Discord. And I got tired of everyone saying, hey guys, and me replying, please use something else. So I wrote a Discord bot that just checked for certain terminology. And it wouldn't kick them or do anything. It would just reply, please update your message, maybe use something like folks. And people hated it because it was literally every other message was like this bot just giving them a warning. Over 2 days, I went from 600 members to 300 members. And everyone was saying, you've got to turn this bot off. Everyone's going. I was like, and? Those aren't the people that I want. I want to be an inclusive open source community. 2 months later, we were at 3,000 because everyone heard we were an inclusive community and it was a safe place to ask questions. And most of those people returned. So I think sometimes you take one step back to take 10 steps forward.
I've seen you had 2 projects, and I'm talking about the GitHub projects feature. In terms of community, you're using that? Is it a central tool? Is it just a side tool?
I mentioned the onboarding process, and part of the onboarding process is the project board, is the issues. But whatever people use, they need to use it. The worst thing is to have something out of date, because people will follow something and it won't make sense because something's disabled or not available. So whatever you use, it's really, really important to use it correctly. So for example, I review open source projects on a live stream. So you're all welcome to submit your GitHub profile or an open source project. But it's so interesting to see so many people have the wiki tab enabled, the releases tab enabled, but they're not using it. Whatever feature you're not using, turn it off. And then as you need it, or as you use it, turn it back on and use it. The project boards are great. It's a great way for people to visualize the priority and so forth. And you can add labels and they link to issues and it's really good. And you can even automate the moving across. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe below, and what's the other experiment?
Share the word.
And leave a comment, that's the other one. Awesome. Well, if you have any other questions, don't DM me, but do ask them. Just tag me on socials. And if I don't reply within 3 days, DM me the link to your question, because I must have just maybe missed it in notifications. So I will definitely answer it, but I will answer it in public. Thank you all so much. It was amazing to geek out with you, and let's get a coffee and chat more. And people, if you want to go get a coffee, feel free to leave. I won't be offended. This is me kind of talking, and I'll be here till tomorrow. Sarah, you have to stay. Sarah, you have to stay.
How was it?
That was good. I saw Sarah saying slow down at one point and saying wrap it up at one point. I was like, oh my God. But no, it was good. I really enjoyed it. It's great to have Sarah in the audience.
Nice.
With telling give me some instructions to see if it's boring, go faster. If it's too fast, slow down. I get excited. So it was great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Nice.